welcome to it. Oh, I have to go down.
This is the Jack in the Box chair.
Actually, it'll be fine. Yeah, but I'll just be like lower. She'll be like it. So. Yeah. That's it.
Alright. Oh, putting that maybe all right, everybody. It's 6:03 Tuesday night. Beautiful Bali. Today is October 21st, 2014. It's time for Bitcoin Filter. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody that's online as well. And we've got a really great show lined up for tonight. Tonight's a very special night. We're directly after the show tonight, we're going to have a screening of the Rise and Rise of Bitcoin. That's going to take place out in the cafe. If you want to order food, we've got a little food order form. Those are only for the people that are local here, not for the online folks. Sorry about that, guys. But we've got a really great show before then. We're going to cover, well, local announcements. There's a few local announcements to cover. We've got the price. Price is down about 6%. We'll talk about the price briefly. We've got, of course, Bitcoin by the numbers by our very own Will. I think there's some very big numbers tonight, right? Yeah, the bigger the better.
Some big numbers, yeah.
Okay. We are going to filter the Bitcoin news. That's what we do every week. For those of you who don't know or aren't initiated, we maintain an online discussion at the Bitcoins in Bali Facebook group. Here, let me share the screen so folks at home can see. Bear with me for just a moment. There we go, guys. That way they can look at the screen that we're looking at, and instead of looking at me, which is much better, more enjoyable. Bitcoins in Bali Facebook group. This is where we maintain our discussion when we're not actually physically together. We go through some of this news. That's what we're going to do next in the agenda. In the news, we've got several big announcements, international announcements, and there's even one big learning moment. We're going to listen to a part of a speech given by Patrick Byrne, the CEO of Overstock.com. He talks about some things that happened on Wall Street that I didn't realize, and I think it should be a bit of a surprise for you guys as well. I'll be surprised if it's not. So we'll do that. And the name of the show tonight is the Rise and Rise of Bitcoin in Bali. I'd like to facilitate a short discussion around the Bitcoin economy here in Ubud and on Bali in particular, and how it has evolved over the last 6 to 8 months, and then what's possible, maybe get some of your ideas. That should take us right to the end of the hour. We've got a lot to cover, so let's jump right in. Where's my glasses? All right. So, local announcements. This past Saturday, we had our very first Bitcoin 101 class delivered in Bahasa, Indonesia. We had about 7 native speakers present, and they all came with Bitcoin. Came with rupiah, left with Bitcoin and a wallet and a little bit of knowledge on how to use it safely and securely. So hopefully that will spread out into the ecosystem that we have going here in Ubud. I'm just really excited that we were finally able to get some Indonesian folks in the room and participating in the Bitcoin economy. The session was led by Vinny, our very own Vinny, and she did a fantastic job. So ideally, we're going to be doing this every month. The second Saturday of every month will be in English. Third Saturday of every month will be in Bahasa Indonesia, and that'll happen on a regular basis. Just basically trying to provide a way for people to get started with Bitcoin. So that was a big success. Okay, more local news. This week we were visited by the Bitcoin ambassador, Lee Wilson. I don't know if you saw him running around. What was That's on the 17th. This guy has been halfway around the world already. He's on a mission to basically document all of the places that accept Bitcoin. According to him, you might see something listed on a website where they accept Bitcoin, but he's going to go check it out and find out for himself and for the benefit of everyone else. You can see there's me and the Bitcoin ambassador. And it's kind of funny. He kind of finds the proof that Bitcoin is accepted in various places. There's him pointing to the Bitcoin taxi. Ubud accepts Bitcoin. And he also ran around town. I think he went to Kismet and even talked to Nyoman, the Bitcoin taxi driver. So it was actually fun having him here for the day. He's off to Hong Kong, I think, next. And he's been to Amsterdam, Shanghai. He's got a long list of cities that he's visited, and he's creating a little documentary he's shooting on his iPhone. So keep your eyes peeled for Lee Wilson, the Bitcoin ambassador. Like I mentioned, we're going to screen the rise of Bitcoin. That happens a little bit after 7 o'clock. We're going to move into the cafe for that, and they'll be setting up in our as we're having this meeting. So we should be able to move straight into the movie screening. So that's going to be good. I've got the trailer here, but I'm going to skip it in the interest of time. But you can check it out in the show notes. We're going to see the genuine article anyway. So I'll skip the trailer for now. Last announcement, we've got the Startup Weekend powered by Google coming up mid next month. It begins November 14th. And what this is it's kind of an intensive gathering of designers, developers, entrepreneurs trying to get their startup off the ground. And I just wanted to issue a challenge to the Bitcoin community that I hope we have at least one Bitcoin project or one blockchain related project that somebody can bring to this startup weekend. Essentially, if you've got an idea, you can come to the first day of this startup weekend and pitch your idea to all of these talented people that will be showing up for this weekend. You can share with them your idea, and if you can get them interested in it, who knows what they can accomplish in one weekend, but maybe they could come up with a prototype or maybe a specification for your idea. And I'm just hoping that at least one or two of the ideas has to do with Bitcoin. So put your thinking cap on and consider joining the Startup Weekend, which will happen right here at Ubud on the 14th of November and through the 16th of November.
I'm signed up for that, Gary, but it's not a Bitcoin idea.
It's not.
At least not yet.
You can't come then. So, no, I'm sorry.
Make it a Bitcoin idea.
Yes, think about it. You've still got a few weeks to add the Bitcoin angle to your idea. Anyway, you can check out the details. It's an event listed on ubud.org. Okay, any other local announcements that I'm missing from the gallery? Okay, let's move right into the price. At the moment, we are at $390 US. Last week, we were up over 400. And I think there's some sort of psychological barrier at 400, but I'm not sure. Anyway, we're down about 6% week over week. I tried to go to the Indonesian site to get an Indonesian price, and the site was down. So actually, let's see if it's up again. This is the Indonesian exchange. So we can get the local price in rupiah, which is designated with IDR. And it looks like we might still be striking out with them.
Oh.
Never a good sign when an exchange goes down, especially when you've got some rupiah or some Bitcoin there. I actually sent this note to Oscar earlier, and he said it's a problem with Cloudflare, which is a CDN. Ah, there we go. Spoke too soon. Oscar's got the problem fixed already. So we're right around 4,500,000 rupiah per Bitcoin, and kind of a normal volume, 52 Bitcoins per day or for the last 24 hours. Taking a look at the market cap for all Bitcoins, we're still right around 5 billion, 5.1 billion US dollars for all Bitcoins in existence. The BMIX score, that's the rank of Bitcoin amongst all the other 190 currencies around the world. Last time we were right near Dominican Republic. Where are we? We're between Malta and Yemen right now. So I don't know. I don't know what kind of company we're keeping these days.
That's the market cap or the
This is the total value of all Bitcoins in existence.
the index?
This is the rank of Bitcoin amongst 190 other currencies around the world.
What's the criteria? Just market cap?
Yep, just market cap. Yep, so we're a little bit smaller than Malta and a little bit bigger than Yemen. So anyway, that's that. I won't belabor the point. Oh,
That's me. Yeah.
so next segment, we're going to do Bitcoin number of the week. Take it away, Will.
All right. Cool. Thanks, Gary. That's actually a good segue because what I want to cover this week is, I'm going to get the mouse up. There's a lot of talk about price, especially lately with the volatility, and I thought, well, let's have a look at fundamentally what might be the upper limit to the price of Bitcoin, right? And so I just did this exercise where, you know, can't see the mouse, they're just, you know, there's people speculating what will be the price of Bitcoin. An article here saying it's 10,000. Another article here from, I think it's Andreessen Horowitz, a VC in the Bali, very pro-Bitcoin, saying it's going to be 100,000. And I thought, let's do a bit of blue sky thinking in a hypothetical scenario, most likely unrealistic, but how big could it get at the very extreme? So let's take a look at world GDP. And the World Bank's got all this data. And obviously the money that we have in society is based on how much goods and services is out there that we're trading. So it's linked to GDP. And the GDP at the moment is about $74.9 trillion. And that is growing. And the World Bank has some information around that as well. So you can see it's tracking, you know, it's been 4% growth rate. We had a bit of a dip in the world financial crisis. It's back up around 3%. So that's another sort of number we can take. And then let's look at the kind of money that's out there in the system to support trade. So there's many measures of money. There's M0, which is kind of like the coins and notes in existence. And then M2 is kind of like all the notes in existence plus banks, bank deposits, like more check accounts, yeah, banks, all those accounts. Anyway, so there's a formal definition on Wikipedia if you want to look into it. It gets quite complex. So you can see that this is actually, they've actually gone in to look at every country in the world, and they look at how much M2 money supply in that country is related to their GDP in that country. So if you go to the graph, it'll show you the aggregate, and you can see it's a relatively steady graph. Comes up. It's been steady lately, and it's at 127% of world GDP. So from all that, we should be able to figure out what in the future scenario, assuming all of that happened in Bitcoin, what the value of that would be. And it wouldn't be a monetary value because of course the US dollar wouldn't exist at that point because it would be in Bitcoin, but it'll give you an indicator of what that feels like in today US dollars. So let's run through it. Before we need to do that, we need to know how many Bitcoins in existence. And on my scenario, I'm going to say, let's say in 15 years time, all world trade is running on Bitcoin, you know. So you can do your own sort of fun numbers. So I just wound this right up, and that's 2029. This is 2024. It doesn't go beyond that. It's at that year, 2024, it's 90.5 million Bitcoins that's been mined into existence. So I figured, look, another 5 years, we might as well just use 21 million, which is the total amount. It's close enough. So let's pump this through. All right, thanks. So what was that figure for GDP? It's like 74.9 trillion. Thank you. So let's go. Is that going to type in 74,910? That's 74.9 million. So I'm going to do this in millions, and then it was times 1.267, which is that should give us how much in millions of dollars we've got in the M2 money supply, and then multiply by 15 years of time. So 1.03 to the power of 15 will give us that number of millions of dollars in world M2 money supply in 15 years. And then I believe we divide by 21. And there you go. That works out at $7 million US is the upper limit per Bitcoin if all world trade was running on Bitcoin.
So what would one Satoshi be worth? Divide that by
100 million.
100 million. Okay. Yeah, so you could still use it as a usable currency.
Yeah. What is that?
So
100
that'd be 7
million.
cents.
7
One
cents.
Satoshi would be 7 cents.
7 cents per minimum
No,
unit.
less.
Yeah.
Divided by 100 million.
But anyway, no one's going to be using 1 cent though in that part of the future.
Probably not, depending on the country, you know. It might, you know, and there's micro transactions we'd want to do, I imagine, like on the internet.
But it's going to be workable. There's enough decimal points basically.
Yeah, and we can throw in more decimal points pretty easily. I think we will do that actually.
Yeah, they could just add decimal points to the protocol. It would be a big change. So you could have, instead of 100 million, you could have 1,000 million.
So do we know what 1 Satoshi would be? Is it 7 cents or is it 0.7 cents?
You'd have to
Divide by 100, 123, 123, and that is 7 cents. 100.
So as long as we're not trying to sell items that are less than 7 cents, we should.
Yeah. I think we'll throw more decimal points in.
Yeah.
So there's another thing I wanted to do, which was, you know, M2 is pretty unrealistic, but there's a measure of M0, which is coins and dollars, and that's probably a little bit more realistic. And I couldn't find really good figures on that, but what do I got here? Yeah, like the US, they've got $1.2 trillion in M0 versus 10.5 of M2, 10.5 trillion of M2. So if we adopted that as a ratio and saying the US is sort of rule of thumb, we could multiply that by 1.2, divide it by 10.5. So that's the proportion of M0 versus M2. And of course, that big number is based on M2. So we're going to do this. And it works out as $800,000 if all notes and coins were in existence.
So if it was just notes and coins, that 1 Bitcoin would be worth $800,000.
Yeah.
If it was all checking accounts, it would be worth 7 million per Bitcoin.
Yeah. And I think it would be like, you know, people store Bitcoin as a bank account more than just what's in your wallet to spend. So potentially, if it does go to all Bitcoin, you know, that's quite a realistic number. It could be bigger than that.
I'd just like to announce that my Bitcoins are for sale for 3.5 million per. So if you want to double your money, yeah, that's pretty good after 15 years, double your money.
Double
Yeah,
your money.
See me afterwards.
Is that 3.5 million rupiah?
It's a big question. Well, he didn't reveal that, did he?
Anyway, is that it?
Yeah, over to you,
All
Gary.
right, good stuff. Thank you. All right, let's take a look at the news. And these are stories that people have posted on the Bitcoins in Bali group over the course of the last week. This is our opportunity to discuss it in person, debate it, argue about it, talk about it, explore it. And this one was just posted today. by our friend Rick. And this is a press release. It just came out an hour ago, but it's pretty interesting. There's a cooperation between MIT, which coincidentally, and we've announced this in earlier shows, MIT is giving all of their freshman students, I think, $100 worth of Bitcoin, right? So all those nerdy, smart people at MIT are being introduced to Bitcoin one way or another. And then this announcement was made where there's 21 digital currency companies. It's the usual suspects like the BitPays and the Coinbases of the world. I think is there a list here? Ripple, Zappo. Actually, I don't recognize a lot of these. I'll have to look into what these are.
Hub Culture, those are big. SnapSwap is one of the ones partnered with Ripple.
Gotcha. CoinSetter. Eric Voorhees is he's a person, not a company. So he must be very important.
He's the CEO of Global Coin Reserve.
Oh, really? He also does Coinapult. And actually sold another company a couple of years ago for Bitcoin. I think $11 million worth of Bitcoin at the time. Yeah, he's a very articulate Bitcoin advocate. But anyway, Rick and I were talking about it. It's like we don't really know what this means. It's kind of a lot of name dropping. MIT, all these Bitcoin companies, and they're going to collaborate on something. So it remains to be seen what will actually come of this. But take a look at the article. And give it some thought and keep your eyes on it. Maybe we'll have something more to talk about later on. Next item, Bitcoin trader customers face losses after management disappears. Unfortunately, this is all too common a story. And I think it, even though it is common, I think it's worth noting every time it happens because, there's lots of Bitcoin companies out there and they're offering to help you. They're trading ease of use for security. And in this case, these guys were offering Bitcoin arbitrage, if I'm not mistaken. So you could actually send them some Bitcoin and they would go around the world looking for arbitrage opportunities. Bitcoin's on sale in Indonesia for 5% less than it is on sale in the United States. So they buy in one market and sell in the other, and they need capital to do that. The only problem is you have to park. If you want to make a lot of money doing that, you have to park a lot of money in their control. And it's a bit of a recipe for disaster. And it doesn't even matter if the people are sincere, because even sincere people can be hacked. And even if they're not sincere, they say that they were hacked, and you never know what really happened. In this case, it says management disappears. That's a good headline, but I think the owner came back and basically said that they were hacked. But essentially, if you were trying to make easy money with Bitcoin arbitrage using this company, you lost whatever money you had in the game. So if you're trying to make 5 or 6% on some big chunk of money, you just lost the big chunk of money and the 5%. So kind of a sad story, but one to keep in mind if you're going to park money at an exchange or any company for that matter where you do not control the private keys, right? Essentially, that gives them the opportunity to do all kinds of things. And even if they're not bad actors, they might possibly be incompetent and get hacked. And either way, you lose your money. So if you want to feel sad, go back and read that one. That was posted by Rick as well, right, Rick?
Yeah.
All right, next story. Amir Taki, this is your favorite, Manu.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I read this
look
one
at this. Amir Taki, for those people who aren't initiated, this guy moves from squat village to squat village around the world. Whenever you find him turning up at various Bitcoin events and outings, journalists track him down for his sage wisdom. He's usually got a kind of a scraggly beard and sitting on a couch, very similar to this in almost every photograph of him. It's usually, that's a very large cup of coffee he has there. Anyway, I thought this was a really cool story. I think Teddy posted this, and he called out Uh-oh, what did I do? Sorry, guys. He called out something that he talked about scalability. And that's something that we've been talking about together, so I thought I'd mention it. I'll just read it here for you. Or just for a little bit of background, we've been talking about the scalability problems with Bitcoin. Right now, on average, we're at about 1 Bitcoin transaction per second. But if we get anywhere close to 7 transactions per second, we run into a little bit of a bottleneck. And we've been seeing that as a problem, but Amir Taki, in his inimitable way, has a different take on it. I'll just read it for you. Scalability, be very careful with that word. If we increase the block size limit, which is a proposed solution for the problem I just mentioned, the bloated blockchain would make it harder for people to run full nodes, which is a full block, Bitcoin client. You need bigger hardware to store all the required data. So in that sense, it wouldn't scale nicely at all. But if we keep the block size limited, people can always use Bitcoin for payments. They just have to pay bigger fees. This doesn't need to be a problem, in particular for the functionality of Bitcoin as an instrument to settle debts. So he's suggesting that we use Bitcoin to settle debts, maybe not to buy a pack of gum, right? The way banks work today is not that every transaction done between 2 parties is sent directly from one bank account to the other. Instead, they all add up the transactions between the different banks and settle the debts at the end of the day. So this is also possible with Bitcoin. In a similar way, Bitcoin could grow to become the backbone of a whole new financial paradigm, as opposed to a payments network that merely papers over the cracks of the existing monetary infrastructure. So
it sounds like basically he's advocating the side chains approach.
Yes, yes. And for those of you who don't know, side chains are, he kind of describes what they are in that little bit, accounting for a chunk of Bitcoin transactions off of the blockchain, and then at intervals settling those that balance of accounts using the Bitcoin protocol. So we could use some other token or some other coin for our day-to-day purchases, and then every night we could update the blockchain with who owes who what.
Now, is he just angling for Darkcoin to be there? Like,
He's got nothing to do with that.
oh, isn't he?
No.
Okay.
Dark wallet.
Dark wallet.
Oh, that's just, all right. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Also, there's a new wallet that just launched with Libet coin, his coin, and the dark wallet is the back end.
Right. Okay. Okay. On that note, no, not that note, but like, has anyone done anything around Moore's law versus blockchain growth?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too. It's like you're talking this, he's putting forward this argument that it's going to require bigger hardware. Well, how much bigger hardware, and how does that relate to Moore's law, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That could be a moot point.
Well, but the thing is, the Bitcoin is already, in terms of mining and running a full node, is pretty much, well, it's basically out of reach of the normal user already. We've already seen that kind of consolidation, and it is somewhat dangerous. I think Satoshi Nakamoto, in his original white paper, his vision was 1 CPU, 1 vote, and a much more distributed consensus network. And because the mining has been so profitable, you've got a lot of consolidation of that computing power. And the thing that he fears, the consolidation, the phenomenon where individuals are no longer running Bitcoin nodes, we already live in that world. And we've actually already approached the 51% problem, which is where one miner or pool of miners has control of 51% of the network hashing power. And that's a dangerous situation for Bitcoin. Basically undermines the integrity of the system as a whole. So yeah, I don't know. It's
I think it's also important to just differentiate between mining and running a full node. They're very different things. And to run a full node, it's still pretty easy. You just need 50 gigabytes of hard drive space. It can be an old crappy computer. It doesn't have to be a fast computer
True.
to run the node.
True.
50 gigabytes? How much?
About 50 gigabytes of blockchain is
Yep, the blockchain is growing exponentially.
Yeah.
It was 13 gigs when about a year ago, and now it's over 50. And well, it's true what Manu says. It's still easy to run a Bitcoin node, but the trend is undeniable. There are fewer and fewer Bitcoin nodes being run, and more consolidation of the of the network, which is
Yeah,
problematic.
sounds much faster than a doubling every 18 months.
There's also the incentive thing is a bit weird because there's no the node running holding the blockchain is where you have the multiple people having consensus of who has what. But holding having a full node doesn't make you coins. Only mining makes you the coins. So there's very little incentive to actually have a full node client over a thin client which uses no storage space at all.
Yep. Good point. Okay, so check out this article which talks to Amir Taki and look up some more on him because he's crazy. He is nutty, and it's entertaining to listen to him talk. So find some other stuff by Amir Taki. You won't regret it. Okay, now I'm going to play a little audio for you. Hopefully we won't have any technical difficulties. What I'm going to play for you now is an interview with Patrick Byrne, who is the CEO of Overstock.com, one of the largest retailers in the United States that accepts Bitcoin. And he took Overstock.com public back in 2002 and discovered a lot of things about how Wall Street works. And I learned something from this. It's only I'm only going to play 2 or 3 minutes for you, but we'll talk about it afterward. And well, let's see if you learn something too by listening to this. Let's say a prayer. Let's see if this works.
I had the keynote speech here at Inside Bitcoins, and you revealed that you want to, well, how can we say this nicely?
Take the drag Wall Street behind the barn and kill it with an axe.
Yeah. And create an alternative to the conventional stock market. Tell me a little bit more about that. For those who didn't hear your keynote speech that are listening to the podcast, give me a brief synopsis of why it needs to be dragged behind the barn.
Well, there's a lot of bad things that happen on Wall Street, but really at the core of it all is the settlement system. And I believe the settlement system has been compromised, and some bad people have figured out how to use that. The regulators don't understand it, but there's a lot of market rigging going on. What Bitcoin presents, what the blockchain presents, is a way to have a peer-to-peer, one-to-one settlement system that doesn't run through any centralized institution that the bad folks can hijack.
Yeah, absolutely. So you explained with some pretty cool graphics in your talk about how it's not, when someone goes to invest and buy a stock, they're actually not buying it directly. They're not exchanging their money for the property rights to that stock. It's going through this
daisy chain. You think you own stock, but you don't. What you own are contractual rights against contractual rights against contractual rights. Someone somewhere down the line has the property rights. So all you have is a bunch of contractual rights, which are not as thick and meaty and trustworthy. So that's the system as it stands. Has been around since 1973, like that. That's how it works.
And at some point, you became aware of this, basically, that the stock market was a whole corrupt system, and these clearinghouses were very corrupt all the way down to the root, essentially. And you tried to expose that corruption, but got met with some resistance, shall we say.
Right. I got a lot of resistance and blowback until 2008. Once 2008 happened, people sort of shut up about how lunatic I was about this stuff. It's really at this point, it's such a corroded system. I don't think there is any way. 40 years ago, actually in the late 60s, there was a paperwork crisis on Wall Street. You used to have these people called jobbers who were running around on Wall Street with burlap sacks of stock certificates. They fell behind to the point that by 1971, Wall Street was only open 4 days a week and limited trading hours just because the settlement had gotten so far behind. So they designed, the industry worked with the SEC, designed a new system that is a central, all the stock gets put centrally and immobilized, and then all the trades are the contractual rights among different parties. So there's actually no property ownership anymore. It's a terrible system.
Or so under this illusion that they do own stocks.
You don't own anything. If you think you own a stock, you're wrong. You have contractual rights against the firm, which has contractual rights against the firm, which has contractual rights against the firm, which actually has the property rights.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. So just to recap what he said, in case the language there was too technical, if you own stock on the U.S. stock market or any modern stock market, you don't actually own that stock. You own the contractual rights to that stock, and they're doing fractional reserve banking with stock certificates. So there are actually more paper representations of the companies out there than actually exist. So this is something that I was not aware of, although I'm very aware of fractional reserve banking. And when you have your deposit at a bank, they loan that out at a 9-to-1 ratio. And so if everyone came to collect their money at the same time, the bank would not have that money. This is what necessitates central banks and central control. I was not, however, aware that they also did this with the stock market. And according to Patrick, very smart guy, Ivy League education, runs a large public company, learned this when he took his own company public, and when he started to ask questions, he got all these federal investigations against him, and really went through the ringer. Came out on the other side unscathed by any of those accusations, but is now in a position to really expose what is happening. I think it's really interesting that he has initiated a project to bring some integrity back to the issuance of company stock by making it based on the blockchain. We've talked about lots of alternate uses for blockchain technology, permacredits and building your own token. And this Medici project of his, he's using Counterparty and some of the folks at Counterparty to build this. It's an alternative stock market to the stock markets that we're used to. So a way to take your company public without going through one of the big investment banks and without having to be listed on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange or any other exchange around the world, with the intent being that he's going to not do it in a fractional reserve way, but in a way that has integrity, where if you own a stock, you actually own the bearer rights to that stock and not some derivative. So really fascinating. Any questions on that, or he gave a speech at some conference in Las Vegas, but he was also the keynote speaker at the Global Bitcoin Conference in Amsterdam earlier this year. His company accepts Bitcoin as payment. He's talking about paying his employees with Bitcoin, and now he's got this effort underway. So he's quite active in the space.
Have you looked into it much, actually how it's going to work?
Well, it's going to use Counterparty. So and Counterparty allows one to create an asset that has a link to the blockchain, and the transfer of those assets are tracked on the blockchain tracked in the portion of the entry where you can store some text. That text is meaningful within the Counterparty system. But essentially, he and Counterparty have collaborated to create this way for a company to take their intellectual property public in the form of shares without going through a central authority.
Because we've seen a lot of IPOs, like crypto IPOs and things like that, as another alternate, create your own cryptocurrency to make an entity public and share tokens all over the world. Just interesting to see this is a different approach from the other crypto IPOs we're seeing.
Well, I don't know if there's a distinction between actually creating a token that represents a company and then creating a market where you can trade those stocks or those portions of a company, or the equity stakes in a company. But this is a brand new announcement. It just happened, so it's all quite new. But it's really exciting to see people doing innovative things with this technology. I mean, we've always said that Bitcoin is good for other things besides money. In this case, we talked earlier about settlements. They're settling stock ownership as opposed to settling who owns what Bitcoins.
Would it be really much different? Because actually, I think when we got into the way we structure the Wall Street right now, there was a sort of deliberate choice, right? We chose to have sort of the fractional trading in a way.
Well, they chose to automate it. They chose to automate it. He was talking about people running around with bags full of stock certificates, and then they computerized it in 1971. But I was never aware that when I buy a stock with my E-Trade account that I actually have bearer rights to that stock. But you don't. The only way to really do that is to have the stock certificate, the physical stock certificate issued, which people rarely do anymore. It's like having your own physical gold versus an account denominated in gold ounces.
So most of the volume in purchases and trade is actually trade. You know, they're trading. So you're dealing with millisecond transactions, or even in the old days, hours within the day. And it would take about, multiple weeks for them to issue you the certificate. And if you were to buy and hold, they always say try and get the certificate, because now you're trusting that third party to hold it for you, and they could go down. And this wise
same
words,
old story, right?
Wise words.
Yeah, it's the same old story.
So in other words, everyone cashed in their stocks at the same time. The company won't have enough stock to pay off that
Right.
stock.
If everybody called and said, I want my stock certificates, there would be a run on the bank.
Right.
And he goes on to say that in the fine print of any relationship you have with a bank that's buying stock on your behalf, there is a force majeure clause. You know, if something major happens, then they can pay out at pennies on the dollar or some fraction of what you actually hold. And they have that option contractually.
It's funny. Force majeure is act of God. I don't think it's act of God, right? It's diddling.
Yeah. Well, when the stock market crashes, it's a bad day.
It's an act of traders.
Now, for normal businesses to use this as a source for raising funds for expansion, for example, not going through the usual IPO and they're using the blockchain to do it. How easy is that to set up? How easy is it to start?
You're talking about raising funds like in a Kickstarter kind of model?
So how do you list on this? Like, how would you list on this? Like a small business, say you needed 100,000 if you wanted to start an expansion project. Say you wanted to say.
So you wanted to
shares of it.
Well, okay. So say you have your company and you want to expand, and so you want to sell 10% of your company. So you could represent your company with a token. You could create 1 million tokens, call them the Mark coin or Mark shares, and then you take 10% of those and you could sell those on the market, and say, I would like cash for these shares in my company, and you take the cash and you expand your business, and those folks own 10% of your business and presumably 10% of the equity and the revenue, et cetera.
Who will hold you accountable then for submitting the correct accounts and make sure that the 10% gets back to the investors? That's solely on.
Well, there is no authority there. You're trusting the math, but essentially you're representing in an irrefutable way that you have relinquished control of 10% of that asset. So they could go to a regular court of law and say, this is what happened on the blockchain. Look, there's evidence here that this transpired, and Mark's not holding up his end of the bargain, so we're suing him.
So in that way, it's secure.
In that way, it's secure.
But there's no way that the blockchain can monitor, for example, the P&L and profit and loss of the venture, so on and so forth, so that 10% is delivered.
No,
automatically.
Not well. The technology is there. If you wanted to build your company and be that transparent, using a cryptocurrency and an internal accounting mechanism to do it could allow you to be extremely transparent to your investors and regulators and whoever else wanted to see what was going on within your business.
So that's possible. Just a simple in and out, like today we made this much, this was what we made. Just a simple math thing, so that people would have a general idea.
Well, yes, it's a big difference between whether your in and out is occurring in a cryptocurrency tied to the blockchain, and whether your in and out is occurring in a mix of other currencies, right?
Right.
So if you're in a situation where, let's say, simplest scenario, you only accept payment in Bitcoin, right? But then it would be very easy for you to set up a mechanism that logs the receipt of revenue. Right. And then how you track disbursements is the other half of the problem to solve. But once you get in a situation where you're dealing with fiat currencies and cryptocurrency, it all sort of becomes a black box.
Well, everything is computerized anyway, so there is some trust. Like when you submit accounting reports to your accountant,
Right.
that goes through accounting software, right?
Right.
And it's normal mechanisms. But the fact that it goes through software is that you can write software that reads that and then figures out the profitability and then divvies the flow of revenues to its shareholders.
Yeah.
It's possible, right?
Well,
And
basically, it's set up just like an audit trail.
yeah, as long as you've got, it's kind of like you're running software off sensors. The sensors might be the accounting software that's sensing the money that came in, and then it can make a decision based on the rule set you've created.
Right.
I was also going to say Reddit is actually doing this, and they like quartering off like a percentage of the equity in Reddit, which is over $1 billion, and they're saying we are going to put that into a DAC structure and let community engage and win on that token.
Yeah,
Well,
I knew that they were creating their own crypto token, but I didn't know exactly what their plans were.
Yeah. Okay.
But it sounds intriguing.
That would make the loop quite nice, yeah. If it could be regulated, assuming that each transaction was done through a swipe or a card, with a card, and it was all went in there, and it was all calculated
Right,
that way.
and all your investors could
All
see.
investors could see it transparent, the value of your share would move up accordingly to that, and then it would truly
Right,
complete
right.
the loop of the markets right now.
Yes, that's a great point. Well, and also if you did at least part of that using math or an algorithm, it would be very attractive to the investor. You could approach an investor and say, here's the algorithm by which we pay out dividends. It's done in math. So every Bitcoin that comes in, a fraction of that is going to be paid in dividends. You can watch that flow, and you're guaranteed that flow because it's built into the logic of the company.
There's this other thing where if you list on the stock exchange, I think you need something like a team of 6 or 12. To comply with the Security and Exchange Commissions, you need a decent-sized team full-time to do this reporting. And using mechanisms like this, it's done with software, right? So the cost of listing a company on an exchange becomes that much less.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get a lot of efficiencies. So I always go on about, what is it? There's something like 5% of world GDP is in the finance. It's 8% in the financial sector, and it's doing these jobs that can be codified into software. And the blockchain invention allows that. So it's really disruptive. Like there's research, I think in Harvard, they say that you can map all the complexities of Wall Street into 22 fundamental contracts or algorithms, and you can rewrite all of Wall Street, or it has the potential to rewrite all of Wall Street into a digital infrastructure. And that means that whatever 8% of world GDP was like 0.08 times whatever that's 70 whatever trillion. So that's like, what was it? It's like it's like $500 billion. Or $5 trillion. It's a big number anyway. It's just a really big number that we can save, right? We can save, and that value goes to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, this is the really exciting thing I think about this technology is it opens up whole new economic scenarios because the cost of doing business is less, right? My little business, I might not be able to take it public with a big investment bank on Wall Street, but I might be able to do it using blockchain technology, and that's even better than modern financial technology that is available to anybody on any scale.
Yeah.
So.
And at the same time, allow the individual to then take small stakes into whatever interests them. Yeah.
Right. So when you take Delicious Onion public, I can get a little piece.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Let's experiment with this idea.
Excellent. Okay. Well, that's actually a good segue into the next section. Any questions on that? I think it's wow, endlessly fascinating as usual. Well, the last thing that I wanted to talk about is maybe try to facilitate a bit of a discussion around building the Bitcoin economy in Bali and in Ubud. If you look on CoinMap, we've got a handful of businesses that accept Bitcoin. Actually, the figures are a little bit larger than this. You know, 22, 23, what's that? I'm sorry, 22 businesses that accept Bitcoin. It's a few more. These are just the ones with a physical location. But you know, back in February, there were 0. This was 0, right? And this meeting that you're sitting in now, we've got a packed room here in Ubud. The first meeting, 0 people came, right? So I think we've come a long way. I mean, this is the community grows bigger and bigger. There's about 450 people in the Facebook group, but we're still in early days. You know, how many people in the room own Bitcoins? Right, so that's most of the room. How many people bought something with Bitcoin in the last week? Okay, so two people. So most of the room has Bitcoins. Only 2 or 3 people are spending Bitcoins, and I think this is a bit of the chicken and the egg thing that we've got going on. You know, it'd be really nice to see Bitcoins kind of flowing in both directions, where people are.
Can I add a question?
Sure.
Who's storing the Bitcoins on their computers?
Storing Bitcoins
amongst other places.
Who's storing it on their phones?
Amongst other places.
And who's like, so of all those people that have Bitcoins, who could, if they wanted to buy something right now easily with their phone, who would be empowered to do that?
Okay.
So there's still quite a few people who could buy things.
Right.
Half the people that have Bitcoins are able to spend them on.
So I'm curious, do you not spend your Bitcoin because you don't know how, or because you're wanting to hold on to them because you think they'll be worth more later? Yeah, Davey is shaking her head. Yes.
Don't know how.
Don't know how.
I'm gonna get help from Vinny later.
Okay. Good. No, this is all good information, because I think well, there is still a bit of a barrier to entry. It's still a little bit geeky. It's not always smooth. I think some of the businesses around town, even though they're listed here, it's easier or less easy at certain businesses. And I think well, we're doing our best to create a community where we can support one another in how to get your hands on Bitcoins, how to store Bitcoins, how to be safe with your Bitcoins. I think all of us, you know, various people from the group have reached out to various merchants and done the heavy lifting to have that initial Bitcoin discussion with a local taxi driver or a warung owner or restaurants and jewelry stores, etc. And these are the things that we see popping up, but it's not flowing yet. I think we still have a long way to go, which is really exciting, actually. If you scroll out a little bit, you know, maybe I'm sounding a little bit pessimistic, but we've got more businesses in Bali accepting Bitcoin, which, you know, there's only 4 million people on the island of Bali, and Ubud, I think, what's the population of Ubud? Like 50,000, 100,000?
No, about
35,000. So, but we've got 22. Oh, Ganyar, the province Ganyar, the township, or gotcha. Well, in any case, we've got more than Jakarta, which is a much bigger city. And if you scroll out, you can start to see where Bitcoins are around the world. I think I went out too far.
Small in New Zealand.
And you know, obviously there are hundreds in various hubs in Europe. Sydney's got a red dot, which is more than 100 places. But you can see in our part of the world, we're rivaling Singapore and other the Philippines and other larger places. So I think we deserve a little bit of credit there.
But how accurate is this? What is this?
Well, these are self-identified Bitcoin businesses that have a physical location.
Do you want to do another one? If you go to Google Trends, like just type in Google Trends, they've got a map in there too.
Google.
Yeah, click there. And click in and just type in Bitcoin.
Here?
Yep.
This is and this is the search term Bitcoin.
But then you've got this map, right? Go down a bit. Okay, and then you can click over to city on the right-hand side of that panel.
Here?
Yeah. And this shows you where the hot stuff is, hot spots. And I was really surprised with the amount of, this is like consumer interest. Really surprised with how much interest there is in the east coast of Australia. It's huge.
Why is there so much there?
A lot of startups in, is it Melbourne? There's like, I got CoinJar. There's a lot of startup activity, and I think
That bodes well for Bali because there's 700, 800,000 Australians coming to Bali.
right. Yeah, well, maybe that's like
based on spending or
Bali's
on actual transactions.
This is based on searching for Bitcoin related items on Google. One thing that's interesting about the trend here is you can see it kind of follows the spikes in price, but you can see over time we have a larger and larger sustained interest in Bitcoin. So there's more and more people searching for Bitcoin on a day-to-day basis. You know, every time there's some big news item, then forecast.
Oh yeah, I've never seen it before. I didn't do it. Not enough data, is it?
I'm trying. I'm clicking headlines.
Tell me what's gonna happen, Google.
Predict the future.
They closed it. They closed it off.
No, the
They
answer
wanted
might
to take advantage. We should embed that.
Anyway, I think well, I kind of envision the next high tourist season there being some of those Australians interested in showing up with their Bitcoin and maybe arriving in Ubud with a phone full of Bitcoin, using a taxi driver, staying at a homestay or a hotel, going to the restaurants around town and staying in Bitcoin, not having to visit a money changer, not having to get their credit card out. But this, we're not there yet, but we could be. But we could be by next July.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day, it'd be so nice to have some like in the airport, have like a billboard with a big Bitcoin logo saying "Drop with Bitcoin, save money," whatever, you know. But some way to like crowdsource funding to help individuals connect with. They could be traveling safer, more easily, and have this additional utility if they use Bitcoin. But in this anarchistic model, how to coordinate some sort of thing like that, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. I think, well, there's already some recognition, at least amongst the geeky people, that Bali is a Bitcoin destination. Earlier this week, I had lunch with the CEO of Purse.io, which is a Bitcoin company. He was here on his honeymoon, but he chose Bali because there's been press about Bali being a Bitcoin-friendly place.
So you feel
Well, actually, you know, Oscar has done a lot to make that happen as well, and his Bit Islands social experiment. That's actually what got the most press, and probably the way that most people have kind of realized that Bali is a good destination. But you know, at least one person showed up and said, "Oh, I thought, you know, Bali was like a hotspot for Bitcoin. How come I can't spend it everywhere?" So we're not quite there yet.
Where did he come from?
Yeah,
the States.
Oh, I was in San Francisco and LA and Silicon Valley. Less places to spend Bitcoin there than there is here.
Yeah, that's a good sign. I like that. Well, you know, I hope that people are, when you're out and about, I think just asking the question, do you guys accept Bitcoin? Even if you know the answer is no. Maybe you'll plant a seed.
You get such funny responses.
You know, when I go to cafe, they have a little feedback form, and every time I do my bill, I'm like, when are you going to accept Bitcoin? You know, I don't know if that ever makes it to anybody.
Bitcoin here when the transport guys are like, transport Bitcoin?
Well, you know what? I was thinking that Bitcoin could solve that problem of all the taxi signs and all the, you know, people harassing people about taxis. You know, there's a T-shirt on sale that says "No taxi today," like at one of the shops on Hanuman. Anyway, I think it's a thing. It's like a known problem. But if somebody, maybe we can do this at Startup Weekend, could build like an Uber based on Bitcoin, right? So you could just, instead of them standing there harassing everyone that walks by They could just call them on the Uber app, and you're the closest taxi driver could arrive and whisk you away. Maybe they could even deliver Bali Buddha to your house, and who knows what. I agree. I agree.
Working on a design for that, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I get really inspired by all the decentralized technologies in the States, how Uber and Lyft and everything's working, and it would go so well. Yeah. It would just like, and not just for cars, for bikes and cars. And the next level of evolution beyond, because Uber is still, the market is decentralized, but the system itself is still centralized. You could produce a decentralized app which just runs peer-to-peer like a mesh network for finding taxis, and then there would be no middleman whatsoever, and you get no wealth lost in the transaction. And that thing, if someone could build that, that would go viral as hell.
Right. Such a good idea. You know, you drive around LA and every single car has one person in it. You know, you've got this 2,000-pound hunk of metal carrying around, you know, individual people. It's so inefficient. If we had a thing like Manu described, you know, we could share. Maybe even people would meet one another. Yes, great idea. Anyway, that is our time. Any final announcements? Any final questions?
Just to mention that the blockchain is 26.5 gigabytes currently.
26.5 gigabytes, the size of the blockchain now. All right.
This time.
Getting larger every day. Right.
I think this time last year, maybe about 8 gigabytes, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
So 3 times, yeah, 300%. That's a lot.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have tonight, guys. Thank you for coming. Hopefully you'll stick around for the Rise and Rise of Bitcoin. We're going to convene to the cafe for that momentarily. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.